Hey guys, how's it going? So in this video, I'm going to show you 5 firearms that I believe could possibly be banned quite soon by the former vice president. And some of these might actually surprise you, but if you think about it, you might see where I'm coming from. And I spend a lot of my own money on this channel, guys, trying to bring you guys a bunch of content that hopefully you like. So I really appreciate all of you are helping to support this channel, and links to support are down in the description. Thank you. Now, first and foremost, my intentions of this video is not to scare you. Look, we're already frustrated enough. However, I've been studying different press releases, different things that his office is saying that they're going to do. And this is just my opinion, and I hope I end up being wrong and they don't ban anything, because shall not be infringed is pretty darn clear, and I'm sick and tired of all this crap. But with that said, if you're thinking about buying an import soon and you have the money, I would think about doing it sooner than later, because as we've seen in the past, imports are often most vulnerable to bans by executive action and from the executive branch. And I'm going to show you some of these firearms, but let's go back real quick in history to 1989. George Bush had just come in office, George Bush Sr., right? And it was March of that year. He had only been in office for 2 months, and he put out at that time a temporary assault rifles ban from importation. Now, what that ended up being is, it started off as a temporary thing, but it ended up getting codified as a permanent ban, and they added many things on. And that's the reason why you can't get an AK from Egypt anymore, for example, that would have 100% Egyptian parts. See, it started this new criteria where they had to have no more than 10 foreign parts. So AKs, let's just say there's some slight variances, whether it's milled or stamped, but you could have like up to 10 foreign parts, so you'd have to replace 6 with American parts. And of course, none of these could be in full auto, because those were banned from import with the Gun Control Act of 1968. That's why we have these very valuable firearms that are still in original factory configuration, but semi-auto, that were brought in before '89. And since then, they've been no more. And there's a lot of imports that we never got in this country because of that ban, because it became too difficult or cost prohibitive for American companies to import them into sporting configuration and then change out the appropriate amount of parts. Now, with that ban, that was just rifles. As of right now, today, when I'm filming this, pistols are not affected by that. So that's why we can have pistols that get imported with all foreign parts. This leads us to where we are right now in this climate, and we could hear a press release any day now from the former vice president. And there's a couple things that they're after right now. They're saying they no longer want handguns that shoot rifle cartridges, and his office also said that he's looking into import bans by executive action. And there's been over 100 people in the United States Congress that have actually written a letter making him, encouraging him to try to go after these types of things. So here's one right here, and this is an awesome firearm, and this is probably the one that has the biggest target on its back right now, or at least one of them. This is the Micro Draco. This is a pistol. It's an AK pistol, chambered in 7.62 by 39. This gun is made in Romania, of all foreign Romanian parts. And since it's a pistol, it's not affected by the George Bush ban, and it doesn't have to have these 922R compliant parts, at least as of right now. So if we look at the receiver here, we can see it's a standard full-size receiver. It uses a standard rotating bolt, just like all your AKMs do. Held within the bolt carrier with the charging handle right here. We can see it has a rear blade style sight attached to the dust cover. It does have a hooded post front sight. It features a 6 1/4 inch cold hammer forged and chrome lined barrel with a birdcage style flash hider. And this barrel is threaded and can accept different types of brakes or other types of devices. Feeds from a normal AK box magazine. And everything on this, again, is from Romania. And this is a good thing, because they've been building Kalashnikovs since around 1963. This is made on a military production line, shipped over here semi-auto, in the same configuration it left the factory, right? Now, I have added on this SB Tactical 1913 folding triangle brace on it. And that leads me to one of the other things. We dodged a bullet with the braces not too long ago, guys, but in my opinion, I think we're going to see a resurgence in them coming after the braces. Now, these braces were originally designed for handicapped people to aid them in one-handed shooting. And even people that are able-bodied are using these braces properly to help them, you know, secure the weapon, get a better point of aim, and just to be able to have more fun shooting it if they're out at the range, or if they needed to use it to defend themselves, they can handle these firearms a little more safe. I've heard talk recently of pistols that fire rifle cartridges. Well, this is chambered in the intermediate rifle round, 7.62 by 39. If you wanted to get a Draco, a mini Draco, micro Draco, there's a whole bunch of different imports. You know, you have the PAP rifles, and then now the PAP pistols, obviously, from Zastava, being imported through Zastava USA. If you have your eye on one of those, I believe that pistols like this are hot on their list. Probably number one. Hope I'm wrong, guys. And then I mentioned rifles. The full-size Wasser rifle. The Zastava PAP series. I wouldn't be surprised. We've seen large classifications of imports banned before by executive action, even under George Bush, who I would note is a Republican. I'm going to show you a couple more, and you're probably going to actually be surprised as we go through these, because some of them you don't think is assault weapons until we look a little bit closer. The next is the Scorpion Evo 3 S1 pistol. And this is made in the Czech Republic and is also an import. Same thing I explained about the Micro Draco. Since it's a pistol, this is able to have all Czech parts on it and doesn't need to conform to the 922R. Now, if Biden would come in and make an import restriction and start classifying all these as, instead of assault rifles, he could call them assault pistols, assault weapons. Look, I hate that word. It's all a bunch of media propaganda terminology. I'm just using the words that they're talking about right now as this discussion is ongoing. Now, this is chambered in 9mm, so it is a pistol round. However, it certainly has a magazine capacity that's greater than 10 rounds, and it also has a brace, so we could easily see things like this Scorpion pistol, which I really like. Very comfortable shooter, and I have this one decked out pretty nice right now for home defense or whatnot. So keep an eye on these also. Rifle round, they're talking about that, but then they're just talking about imports in general. So this is a really nice firearm, by the way. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Let me know if you guys have one of these. It's a really great shooter, and happy to own it. Now here's another one, and this is the original first generation Canik 55 TP9 9mm handgun, made in Turkey. This one's pretty cool. You can decock it on the slide here. It actually has a pretty cool trigger function where you can stage the trigger about halfway back, continue to pull through, or we can pull the trigger halfway back, leave it there. It has not broke yet. It is not fired. Decock, and then the trigger goes back into a longer double action type pull. Now you guys are wondering, wait a minute, how and why could he ban these? Well, he's talking about assault weapons and the possibility of banning imports. First of all, this is an import. This is from Turkey. You know, think what you want about Turkey. Some of you like guns from there. Some of you hate it. It's fine with me either way. Everyone can have an opinion on that. However, a lot of our handguns coming into the country right now, whether they're 1911s, these Canik series, which has about 20 different models now, these are very, very popular firearms and also quite affordable. Now, here's the deal. This holds 18 rounds, okay, which is standard capacity, perfectly normal for the handguns that we carry and shoot every day, right? Well, if you look back on the Biden-Harris website, when they were running for office, they showed their whole gun control policy. And they said, in their opinion, anything that can accept a magazine of over 10 rounds would be considered an assault weapon. So if he's talking about the possibility of banning imported assault weapons, that's one thing he could be differentiating between the assault rifles ban from George Bush versus just weapons. And they are talking about handguns. Now, they may exempt something like this just because they're more commonly owned, but I wouldn't take it for granted, guys. Anything's possible. They're getting more and more radical by the day. Here's a Beretta 92S, otherwise known as the M9 in U.S. service. But this is the old school Italian police trade-in that has the magazine release down here on the lower part of the magazine. And you guys are looking at this thinking, man, what are you even talking about? Well, this is an import made in Italy. These were really cheap on the market just a couple years ago. I hope you guys got one of those because they were really affordable and great little pistol. Well, 15 round magazine. So back to what I just said. If assault weapons are going to be defined by the former vice president and his administration as assault weapons, and he's talking about blocking the import of assault weapons, here we are. And this is where we really need to start thinking about things. Because I bet you there's one of you out there thinking, or maybe one of your friends would, when you saw the Micro Draco or the Scorpion Evo, you're like, come on, man. That thing's big. It's got a brace on it. It's got the clipazine, whatever type of terminology people use. And I'm sure you have friends like that. And they're saying, you don't need that. What do you need an assault weapon for? Well, they've fallen victim to the media propaganda. Then we look at this Beretta 92. Which, again, look at his definition on his website. 10 rounds or more. This holds more than 10 rounds. And it is an import. And he's talking about imports. So we also need to look at firearms like this. And that's when we start to realize it doesn't matter what the gun's shaped like. We all know this. We know the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. But this doesn't even look scary. I mean, this is a classic that was put into use in like 1980, right? But this would meet the criteria as far as some of the things that we're hearing floating around right now coming from the administration. Last but not least, a lot of the Taurus G-Series pistols, and this one being the G3C. Now, this would also apply to the G2C, the full-size G3, G3C Toro. Many other pistols too, but these are made in Brazil, guys. Yeah, there's Taurus USA, and some of their firearms are made in the United States. However, these, although they're imported, either into Miami, Florida, if you have a little bit older one, or Bainbridge, Georgia, if you have a newer import, it clearly states, made in Brazil, on the receiver of this firearm. These come with a standard capacity of 12 rounds, which certainly puts them over the 10-round limit that Biden-Harris would want you to be able to have. And when they're talking about possible foreign assault weapons import ban, this could possibly qualify. Just think about that. The little G3C 9mm quickly becoming one of the most commonly owned pistols in this country. Concealed carry. G2Cs, G3s, all of these. They hold 12, 15, 17 rounds respectively. And if he literally signs something, and I hope he doesn't, guys. I hope he doesn't. But if he signs something similar to what George Bush did in March of 1989, Bush just banned the import of any rifle, okay, that held over 10 rounds. And it also couldn't have certain evil features on it, even if it only held 10 rounds. Well, if he just took that ban and made it for pistols, handguns, this would fall into that. I don't know why, but there seems to be some confusion on here with different comments I've got where people for some reason think these are made in the USA. I assure you they're not. It says made in Brazil clearly on the receiver, which as of right now, because they're talking about changing that too, of course, like everything. Just want my dang country back. You guys know what I'm saying? But yeah, the frame, which is the firearm right now, is the receiver. It'll say Georgia or Miami on the slide. That's what's called the importer's mark, which they legally have to put on when a firearm is imported into the United States. So when you hear them say that they want to ban the importation of assault pistols or imports of any kind, just realize we take a lot of this for granted, but they get rid of these cheap Brazilian guns, they get rid of these cheap Turkish guns. There's still many, many fine offerings available from America, and I love American businesses, but it's just going to jack the price up for all of us because they'll have less competition and they will raise their prices, but also there'll be so much more demand than supply that we'll see prices just keep going up and up and up. And if you go back and look at one of those pre-brand rifles that was brought in before March of 1989 under George Bush's ban, see what those go for on the secondary market, and you guys will kind of see what happens a couple decades later as these firearms doubled, quadrupled, quintupled, and in some cases are worth 10 or more times what they cost when they came into the country before they were banned because nobody ever unsigns these executive actions and they kind of just stick around forever. At least that's the way it's always been. So, one more time, I hope I'm wrong, guys. I'm just doing this video to put it in perspective for you to think about what they mean when they talk about assault pistols and assault weapons. 10 rounds is what they're defining them. And for some reason, to me, it's all completely illegal because the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. And was just Congress writing and affirming a natural God-given right that we all had before our government was even formed. However, they've banned before and they're promising to ban again. And I don't want us to sit here being all depressed and ticked off all the time, but I don't want us to be woefully ignorant and think it could never happen. It could never happen until all of a sudden it does. So I don't know when there's going to be an announcement. Hopefully there isn't one, but it seems inevitable. There's going to be a press release soon about some type of executive action on gun control. A lot of the rumors are on these types of pistols. I'm not telling you to go out and panic buy, but if you have the money set aside and you were thinking about one of these imports and you just weren't quite sure, days could matter, and I wouldn't wait weeks or months because things can drastically change and prices and availability could go up very quickly. I'll conclude with this. If you want one of these, get it. Supply right now is much, much lower than demand. If you can find one, these are going to go up in price, period. I've never seen an import AK that wasn't a good long-term investment. This is very small. It's very compact. It does fire a rifle round. This is a 100% imported pistol. And in my opinion, this is the thing I'd be looking at the very most. Something just like this Micro Draco AK pistol. Alright guys, I wish you all the best. I hope this doesn't happen. I'm just throwing this out there because I don't want like newer gun owners or even those of you that have been around this a long time to kind of forget about some of these things and think, man, I wish someone would have just reminded me of this. Just like if we would have known about it the day before March 12th of 1989 when Bush signed his order, there was probably people back then that would have been much appreciative if they would have just thought about it too. So one more time, I hope this doesn't happen. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen. I'm just hearing lots of things from reputable sources, and this right here is basically the definition of what I believe they're after. Alright, thanks for watching, and have a good one.